Hey, what's up guys, and welcome to Reddit Scary Stories. This video will just be a ton of different spooky and scary stories, and trust me, they are all just great, so you'll want to stick around until the end and just listen to all of them. It's a great video to fall asleep to, or just listen to while studying and stuff like that, so just stick around and listen to all these stories. They're amazing, and also subscribe to the channel. And like the video, it helps out the channel a ton. But all right, anyways, let's get into some Reddit scary stories. There's something in the woods. I previously posted this story with my wife's account a couple days ago in r/Bigfoot. I didn't know what we had seen. It wasn't until someone replied with "feel free to post on r/Backwoodscreepy." This caught me off guard, as I never heard of a Glimmer Man or a crawler before. Now, I haven't read too much into this topic, as I have a lot going on, but I soon realized that this ties in just about everything that has happened since we moved in a year ago. I'm going to start with the seemingly unrelated incidents that have led up to the most recent eye-opening experience. About a year ago, I moved my family and I to a home way out in the woods in Tennessee. I wanted to be brief here, but I need to get this off my chest. And after looking into this matter a little more, I have a lot more details that I think will paint a clear picture in the end, so please bear with me. The nights here can be extremely loud. Between the crickets, the tree frogs, and the cicadas, it can almost be deafening. One night not too long after we moved in, I'd forgotten something in my car and headed outside to get it. The first thing that struck me as odd was that my dog wouldn't go outside with me. My dog goes everywhere with me, as I am her whole world, but not this night. As I held the door open, she looked out, then looked up at me and was like, "Nope." So I walked out and shut the door behind me. The second thing that caught me off guard was that there was not a peep. It was dead silent. Still shrugged this off and walked down my front steps and headed down to my car. When I got about 10 feet from my car, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I felt as though something was watching me. I looked around but saw nothing. After I reached in my car for what I had forgotten to grab earlier, I had this feeling like something was moving towards me. I took a step back and checked around me. All of a sudden, I heard one of my hedges next to me that lined the walkway to our front door rattle. At first, I thought it was a rabbit that I had spooked, as I had seen one just earlier in the day right where this was. A few seconds later, I heard the sound of a large rock about the size of a cantaloupe landing a few feet away from me. It hit the walkway and bounced into a shrub. I drew my gun and called out and said whoever this was is about to be shot. After a few seconds of nothing, I began to think that maybe this was some local teenagers messing with the new people. I holstered my sidearm, turned, and started walking back to my front door. Almost as soon as I turned towards my house, I heard this deep panting sound. It sounded like a huge dog, but what made me note back to my front door was that it sounded like it was right behind me. I leaped up onto my porch, turned, and drew my gun again, expecting something right there. But again, there was nothing. A couple weeks later, I was on my porch at night sitting on a bench with my wife. She got up and walked inside to get something, and as soon as she shut the door, I heard that panting sound again. I couldn't see anything, yet this sounded like it was right on top of me. The sound was coming from everywhere, and it was very loud. Again, I couldn't see anything, so I headed back inside my house. Now at this point, I was questioning moving here, but after nothing else really happened, I let it go. A month or so later, it was really rainy and stormy night. This is around 9 p.m., and my wife and I enjoyed listening to the rain and talking about how relaxing the rain is. Me growing up in Oregon loved the rain, and for the past 10 years we lived in Vegas, where it dumped the entire year of rain in the day, then be bone dry for the rest of the year. For my wife, who grew up in Nevada, rain was such a rare thing. She loved going outside and watching the rain, so for us this was an enjoyable experience. Except this night in particular, things took a weird turn. As we were sitting there talking about the rain and relaxing, my wife stopped me and said, "Did you hear that?" I said, "No, what did you hear?" She said, "I swear it sounded like a small child calling for help out in the woods beside our house." I said, "No, I didn't hear anything." After a few moments of us listening intently, she said, "There it is again." I said, "I didn't hear a thing, sweetie. Are you sure you're just not hearing things?" She looked at me offended that I didn't hear anything and said, "No, I'm positive. How could you not hear that it was our son? I think he's out there and got lost." I said, "No, he's in the house sleeping on the couch." We then both looked through the blinds that were open right behind us, and we could see all of our children laying there. She said, "That's so weird. I swear it sounds like our son." I said, "Well, it isn't him, right? He's right here. Besides, I don't hear anything." She then stands up and says, "Wow, he's really crying out for help. I need to go look for him now." At this point, if you knew my wife, you'd know she's absolutely creeped out by the woods and wouldn't be caught dead walking into them during daylight, much less at night during a storm. I grabbed her hand and said, "I've been listening intently, and there's absolutely nothing calling out for help. You need to stay here." At this point, I'm getting worried about her. She was acting completely out of character, not to mention that at this time, she was 8 months pregnant with her baby daughter. She then says, "What if there's some child out there lost in the woods?" I said, "Well, first off, I would be able to hear them too. Secondly, there are no other kids around here for miles, and the odds of them being lost 100 ft from our house that's lit up like a Christmas tree is nil." She then says, "I know, but what if it's a kid?" Before I could say anything else, she stands up and starts walking towards the stairs. I jumped up and grabbed her hand and said, "No, you're not. Get in the house. I don't know what's going on, but you need to go inside." She then complies and we both go inside. I don't know what this was, but it freaked me out. A few months after this, just as it was getting dark outside, I heard the front door to our house open and I got up to investigate. We have autistic 6-year-old twins, and we have the door set up so they can't open it without us there, so to hear the sound it could only be my wife. What was weird was the fact that she doesn't usually go outside without saying something to me. I walked out front and saw my wife walking down our private road towards the drive on the side of the house. I asked her what she's doing, and she said she was sitting on the back patio and kept hearing a baby crying out in the woods. I said, "Seriously, are you just going to decide to walk off into the woods to investigate?" She then looks out into the woods and says, "See, there it is again." Again, I can't hear anything, but what I did notice is that it was completely silent out again. I told her, just like before, the chances of a baby being out in the woods outside her house is slim, and that she needed to get back in the house. She said, "What if someone left a baby out there?" I said, "Well, if that were true, I would hear it too." Now at this point, I was really starting to worry about my wife's mental health. I actually asked her to see a psychiatrist, and she did. Now looking back, I feel really bad about this, knowing what I know. A key to this moment was that my wife had just given birth to a baby girl a month before. A few days after this, we are out front on the porch. It's early evening, and I just mowed the lawn this day, and our 3-year-old son was riding around on his little car in front of the house. Now he knows that he is not allowed outside of a certain area that we mapped off. He loves playing outside, but with the road behind 50 ft from our porch, we have to be careful, as a lot of boaters will fly through after drinking all day on their boats. As we were talking, we are both keeping an eye on him. A neighbor drives by and stops to say hi for a second. The interaction took approximately 8 seconds, as all they said was, "How are things?" We said, "Good," and he told us he would stop by later as his wife got something for the kids, who happens to be one of their teachers in school. And we said, "Okay, great," and he drove off. I looked over where our son was and he was gone. I called out his name and ran over to the side of the house and could hear his car on our side drive. I scolded him for leaving the area, and he said something in his 3-year-old gibberish and pointed to the woods behind our house. I said he had 5 seconds to get back up into the front of the house or else, and he adamantly pointed back in the direction of the woods and kept trying to tell me something. I looked off in the direction of the woods and just assumed he saw a deer or squirrel or something, wanted to see it up close. I walked him back up to the front of the house, and he cried the whole way there. He got really upset that I wouldn't let him go into the woods, but I just wrote this off as him being curious, and most 3-year-old boys are. Now this instance isn't isolated, as our twins have done similar things, but nothing quite as extreme as this. There have been nights where we had just laid down for the night and heard a loud bang on the side of our house on the wall behind our bed. It was so loud that I jumped up and looked out the window. Our flood lights had come on, but I couldn't see anything. Now the weird part about this is that our bedroom sits about 12 ft from the ground level, as we have a full-sized basement that's cinder block. I put on my slippers and grabbed one of my 12-gauge shotguns and walked outside to investigate. It was dead silent again. The flood lights that on the side of our house had clicked off at this point, so I walked over to the end of the yard and shined my light around the yard. There was nothing. I walked around the house and shined the light around intently. As I approached the back side of the house, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up, felt like something was watching me. I shined the light up in the trees, but again nothing. I rounded the corner, and the first thing I noticed was that my 3 dogs that were in the area weren't making a peep. Now our dogs have no filter and will bark at anyone, and everyone, this includes me, so to see them all hiding with their tails between their legs, not making a peep, really had me worried. As I kept walking, all of a sudden the crickets and frogs started making sounds again. It was as if someone had clicked a switch. I walked back into the house and told my wife that I hadn't seen anything. She shrugged and said okay, as long as our dogs were okay. Due to the circumstances that night, I decided to let the dogs in and sleep with us. This very same thing happened on all 4 exterior walls of our house. It's random and annoying, but just like this instant, every time, there's nothing going on outside. There's also been times where we were sitting in the house, and as I was watching a movie, my wife walked over to me and said, "Did you call me?" I said no, and she said she swore she heard me call her name in her ear. She said that it was definitely my voice, but she didn't understand because it sounded so close, and I was a good 20 ft away from her in my recliner. The important part of this is that she was sitting at the table doing something, and the slider to the backyard was open behind her. Now our back patio sits about 20 ft off the ground, and it's like a balcony as it has no stair access outside. I think the previous owner built it for barbecuing. There have been several instances where she would say she heard something whisper in her ear, but she couldn't make out the sound. Again, I kept thinking she was going crazy, but as you will see, I think all of this is tied into this final moment where things are revealed. The last thing I want to mention before we get into what just happened is that I have a shooting range built behind my workshop on opposite side of our property, next to the main road. It is kind of in a down slope, but it works perfectly for what I need it for. The range itself is cut straight into the woods, going down about 100 yards or so. When you're down at the range, you have woods surrounding you on all sides except back up to my shop. I have to say, it has always felt creepy when I'm dealing with my targets or mowing. When you're down there, it feels like you're miles from anyone. One day around 5 o'clock in the evening, I was sighting in my new rifle scope. The sun was still up, but was going to start to fade soon, so I knew this was going to be a final test. Up until this point, nothing really happened when I was making my multiple trips down range other than this feeling of uneasiness. As I got down range, I kept getting this feeling like someone or something was watching me. I looked around but didn't see anything. As I was placing stickers over my previous shots, I heard something big off to the side of me. It sounded like a large branch that had snapped off a tree. Now, if you've been in Tennessee woods, you know there's a lot of branches fall off trees randomly out of nowhere. So this is nothing new, except this time it was very loud and sounded like a fresh, strong wood, if that makes sense. I turned and looked, but again couldn't see anything. I started walking up to my rifle, and I swear I heard something right behind me. I turned around, but again saw nothing. As I started to walk again, I heard this deep growl. It was really deep and loud, and what's worse is that it was all around me. I turned around facing the range and started walking backwards. The thought of some rabid dog charging out of the bushes had me freaked out, so running wasn't a good idea. I slowly walked backwards up the hill to my rifle, but nothing happened. I grabbed my rifle and sprayed the target with rapid fire, hoping to scare off whatever was stalking me. I left 10 rounds in the mag and grabbed my rifle bag and quickly walked back up to the house. I never told my wife about this as I didn't want to freak her out. Fast forward about a year later from when we moved in, and my niece is staying with us as a live-in nanny to earn money over summer break from college. We were on our way back from the store, and about a mile from our house, I saw 2 eyes reflecting in the headlights coming from a wide tree on the side of the road just ahead. It had caught my attention because they were higher than a deer but a different color and size. Just as I had said, "What is that?" and squinted, they vanished. I had made a comment that it was almost as if it knew I could see its eyes and moved. The color was kind of a golden yellowish green, but they resembled the mannerism of a large cat. As they felt ominous, it's hard to explain. But I shrugged it off as we were passing the tree and saw nothing. A few moments later, we arrived at the house. As we were getting bags out of the car, my 3-year-old son came bolting out of the house, excited to see me. As I was waiting to help her carry in her bags, I heard my dog growl. I looked in the direction she was looking, at my neighbor's property across the street. Now what I saw had kept me up all night. Up until this point, I have always been skeptical, as I had never seen anything with my own 2 eyes. Even with what just happened to me a year prior, I still had my doubts that it was just my mind playing tricks on me. Now my street is kind of spread out neighborhood. Each house sits on several acres, and at the end of our road is Kentucky Lake. My neighbor's house sits adjacent to my house on about an acre lot. Directly in front of my house is a wall of woods, and directly behind my house is several thousand acres of untouched forest. As I was looking across the street to my neighbor's property, I saw a large, dark figure between the trees. At first, the movement caught me off guard, as it looked like something big moving quickly on all fours. That's when it came into clear view, and it stood up and walked like a man. At first, I didn't know what to make of it. It was very tall, but what was strange about it was the distance it was covering, and the fact that when it was in front of its shed, I swear I could see through it. It was clearly walking quickly, but moving faster than any person could, at a sprint. More importantly, there was no sound. It was like it was phasing in and out of reality as it moved. I said, "What the hell is that?" and realized that it was looking directly at us. It had moved at an angle away from us to minimize its time out in the open, and moving as quickly as it could while still being silent. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up as I realized that whatever it was stalking us. I told my niece to get in the house now and grab my son, and booked it inside. I grabbed my AR-15 with a short scope and came back outside to see my niece still grabbing stuff out of her car. Knowing I told her firmly and clearly to get in the house, her disregard to my command annoyed me, but still I watched over her without saying a word. As she was slowly walking, she turned towards the woods across the street from my house and suddenly bolted for the house. She ran up the steps in a panicked state. I asked her what she saw, and her face was pale as a ghost. She said, "I heard something big in the woods walking loudly on the leaves, and when I turned towards it, I heard a deep guttural growl." I asked her why she didn't come when I told her, and she said that she thought I was talking to my son. I told her what I had seen, and she wanted to get a closer look to see if she could see something. I told her that it was not a good idea, and she went anyway. As she was walking down the walkway, I heard the sound of dry leaves crunching in the woods across the street. I told her to stop and come take my flashlight. Now at this point, she is about 6 ft away from my wife's SUV. As she turned and started walking back to me, I caught a glimpse of something gray and hairy bolt from behind the SUV back across the street into the woods. My porch is a raised porch, and our SUV is about 6 and 1/2 ft tall, and whatever this was, it cleared about 45 ft in what looked like a single jump, moved like lightning. Whatever it was wanted my niece. It jumped behind the car out of my line of sight and was waiting for her. She still ignored my warnings and grabbed the flashlight and walked down towards the car. As she entered my driveway, she stopped dead in her tracks, leaned forward as if she could see something. I asked her what she saw. She turned and ran back up on the porch with a terrified look on her face, saying nope, nope, nope over and over again. She said it was a figure hiding inside of a tree and that she saw its eyes. I asked her what they looked like, and all she could say was that they looked like a dull red at first, but as she got closer they looked dead. I said, "What do you mean dead?" And she said that their pupils were like gray, like their white eyes look when they're blind. She said it was a really dark gray, and she swore she could see through it almost like a dark cloud. She wanted to go again and took a step down the stairs, and as she did it revealed itself from the tree. I said get inside, and we went in and locked the door. It looked like a tall human-shaped being. It was really tall and looked ominous as hell. The next morning we did a height comparison to the tree limb. She saw it stand over, and it put its height around 9 ft tall, and its eyes were about 6 in apart. At this point, I don't know what this thing was. After doing some research, I think this was a Glimmer Man / crawler. I looked to see if there had been any other sightings in Benton County, but nothing. More importantly, I swear it would phase in and out almost like a shadow person, but bigger and more obvious. Now, I originally posted this on r/Bigfoot, but after doing a bunch of research, I believe this belongs here. One of the things that makes this fit is that it can communicate telepathically. This explains why everyone is hearing something that nobody else could hear. Secondly, it has a playback-like communication, so when I heard a dog panting, it was probably one of my dogs that has heard. My wife was actually hearing our son crying for help, as he had recently fell and cried for help. The baby crying would be our newborn baby who she had given birth to recently, and it must have heard my call my wife's name, and kept telepathically calling my wife's name with my voice. Another thing that my niece had said the night when she felt compelled to go back outside to it. She said she felt like this thing was communicating with her somehow, and wanted her to go back outside. The more I read about this thing, the more everything that's been happening over the past year makes sense. One thing that I find extra convincing is that down the road towards the lake there's a property that is barbed wired off, and is a wall of forest with no driveway. A lot of the property down our road is undeveloped owned land, and on the trees there is a large old sign that says "Screamer lives here," with an arrow pointing back into the woods. Now I have to admit, when I first saw the sign I laughed, thinking maybe the owner screamed at trespassers who entered his property and teenagers put up the sign to mess with him. But when I did a satellite search of our neighborhood, that entire section of road has no houses or trails or anything, and is just pure forest for as far as I can see. One of the things that this thing is said to do is make a loud scream when threatened. Now that you understand my story, I doubt this is the ending. The next question is, what can we do? I don't want my wife or kids to disappear one day. And if there is more than one of these things out there, this really makes the missing 411 make a whole lot of sense. I feel perplexed and scared as what can I do? Any advice? I'll try and keep this post alive with any new experiences. Edit. Picture of sign, and I'll put it up on screen. I apologize, it's different than I remember, but similar. You can see why I made the connection after. Update 1. Thank you all for the support. We are overwhelmed with the number of responses that we have had. Unfortunately, we can't afford to get the camera system / game trail cameras that many have recommended. I'm a disabled veteran and just lost my business to the COVID lockdowns, and we are struggling to afford the basic amenities currently. That being said, I did go out soon after posting one night to try and get some evidence to bring here for you. Unfortunately, the camera on my phone is not great for nighttime and seems to make the images very grainy with low lighting. As I was sitting there at night, I did catch some strange sounds on camera as well. When I pass an area with my flashlight, there appeared to be something. When I came back to it, there was nothing again. Due to the lighting, it is very hard to make out. I haven't felt comfortable going out since. My niece just came back from a week's vacation in Florida, so we plan to sit out there a couple of nights to try and see if we can see anything. This stuff has been happening for a while now, But it was random and far apart. Ever since this last incident, I've seen things that I can't explain, and they seem to be happening almost on a daily basis now. Last night when my niece arrived, we went on the front porch to welcome her. I did notice something that looked like a face staring at me. What was weird was that I was staring at it. It moved back into a shadow without moving, if that makes sense. There are the things I really want to get here for you. We had an interview for a podcast and plan to do a few more. We'll post the links as we get them. There's a story of a man in Georgia who I believe saw the same exact thing I did that night that I'd like to post a link for you as well. We're going to be working with an artist to try and get a good picture to show exactly what we saw that night. If anyone wants to donate/loan a better camera, message me. I'd really like to keep everyone updated on things going on. There have been other things that have happened here that I haven't mentioned in the post, but I would like to add. I know that they may not be connected, but I feel like you should all be the judge of that. The one thing that I would like to add in this update that I hadn't thought about connected was about 2 to 3 weeks ago, my wife and I had been in an argument about something silly. She decided to walk back into the woods to clear her head. I was on the back patio when I noticed her walking down on shooting range. I asked her where she was going and she said to cool off. Now I know the chances of something happening to her was slim, but I found it odd that she would choose to go into the woods rather than simply walking down the road. I quickly got dressed and went down to try and bring her back. I went to the end of the range and called out her name. After a few minutes of calling out, and I heard nothing, not a peep or a twig or anything. Now the weird part is that it's impossible to move around these woods without making any sound, especially for her. I was worried that she was walking too far, but I had to get back into the house as children were home alone. It freaked me out because it was as if she had just vanished. I went back to the house and debated calling someone, but figured I'd give her a little bit more time. I went to the back patio and waited. After about an hour, I started to get really worried. I called out her name again and decided that I would call if she hadn't returned an hour and a half mark. After another 20 minutes went by, she came walking back out of the woods, angry that I was worried about her so much, that also relieved. I asked her what she was thinking. She said what? She walked back up into the house. She came in and looked at me as if I was crazy. I said, "Did you not hear me calling out to you?" She said that she only heard me once, and she replied, "Now this is where it gets crazy." She said, "I've only been gone for about 10 to 15 minutes. Why are you freaking out?" When I told her that she'd been gone for an hour and 20 minutes, she didn't believe me. She also said that when she went down there, she didn't go very far. When she turned around, she started walking and got worried that she was lost. She said that she didn't recognize where she was, but something told her to keep walking. She said it felt like a strange and the air felt different when she came back out of the woods. She was also relieved to see the house. Now the part that upsets me the most about this was that where she said she was, it's impossible. I was literally standing 20 to 30 ft away from that spot. If she had been there, not only would I have seen her, but she could have talked to me in a normal voice. More concerning is that you can see the house from the spot, and how she felt lost is mind-boggling. I don't know what this was. I thought that again she was just losing her mind. After reading a lot of responses, I feel that what happened to her was real. I plan to go back to where she was with her, prove that you can see the house from there, but I want her to show me exactly where all she went as well, talk me through everything. I know some people have to be thinking that we are crazy, but I promise that I'll do whatever it takes to get proof and keep you all updated as we figure this out. I know this is turning into a book to read, but I want to be as detailed as possible. Let me know if you want to keep me posting the updates here like this, or if you want to make a new post. I'll try to keep a weekly update for you all. This is the guy that I saw exactly what we saw. We have heard random explosions that shook our house. I just figured we lived in redneck country. Update 2 June 24th, 2024. Weird things keep happening today. My 3-year-old son is playing on the back patio a few feet away from us, and all of a sudden the dogs inside jump and start barking as one of our dogs, Duke, that's on the patio with him, comes bolting into the door. I jump up to see what's going on. My son is pointing at the tree line, saying, "Werewolf daddy, werewolf." Now my son loves watching videos of werewolves for toddlers for some reason. I normally put this off as nothing, but if you saw the look in his face, you would know that he was serious. Plus, with the way my dogs reacted, he had to have seen something. I pulled out my phone and began recording. He kept saying, "Daddy, look, werewolf in the bushes." I tell him, "I can't see anything, but I can hear something really big in the leaves." I'll post a recording of the ordeal to see if any of you can see anything that I might have missed. Update 3, July 9th, 2022. Okay, I meant to keep everyone updated up until now. I've just had a lot on my plate. My niece has quit. She said she can't handle all the stuff that has been happening to her. Everything was fine for a while. We kept indoors for the most part. We went on the porch one night with a flashlight and camera hoping to catch something. We kept hearing things in the brush, which could be anything. After a while of not seeing anything, we went back inside. I said my prayers and slept like a baby. My niece, however, did not. She woke up later that day and seemed a bit jumpy. I asked her what's wrong. She said that she didn't sleep well as something was outside her window. It took a bit of prodding to get her to talk about it. She said she could hear something big outside her window, but every time she looked, she couldn't see anything. She said she heard weird noises that she couldn't describe. She came out in the living room to see if I was up, but I was fast asleep. She decided to go back in her room and go to sleep watching YouTube on her phone. She said she was almost asleep when she felt something standing right behind her. She turned around, and there was nothing. She said she was having the feeling, but brushed it off as her imagination that was up until about 3 o'clock a.m. When she woke up, she said she had her phone in the windowsill playing no video. She had the same feeling as before, but this time it was very intense, like whatever it was, it wanted to devour her. She turned around quickly and saw what looked like a shadow disappear into a wall in a blink of an eye. She told me this kept happening till she passed out late in the morning. I told her that was weird, as we had never experienced anything like that in the house before. We have had weird things happen, like things disappear for a while, then reappear days or months later in the exact spot they last were. She said it felt like whatever this was made her feel like it wanted to hurt her. I told her to keep me updated and let me know if anything else happens. A few days later, she asked if we can use the hot tub that's out back. I explained that it's off and we can't afford to heat it. When we went over to it, I opened to look inside. To my disbelief, not only is the on, but the water looks great minus a little cleanup that needed to be done. As I'm walking around, all of a sudden I hear this really loud thump behind me, like a log falling on the ground or a really big boulder hitting the ground. Imagine an engine block falling 20 ft onto soft soil. It made me jump. I turned around but couldn't see anything as the brush was too thick. I kept helping her work on the spa. Then she said she's going to go back inside and get changed so she can get in. I look around and realize that it's getting dark outside and I really don't want to be out here. I bend over to work on getting the filter cleaned out, and I hear what sounds like something big snapping branches and charging at me. Made me jump, then run to the back door. I turned around to see what it was and was nothing. I walked back into the house and walked upstairs. I tell her I heard something out there, and she looked at me for a minute, then said, "Well, I want to get in and relax." She asked if I can leave the back patio door open so if she needs me she can call, but according to her, she enjoyed the spa without incident. Every day I notice her getting more anxious and less willing to talk about it. She says every night something new happens to her. When I ask her to elaborate, she refused. A few nights later, I walk out on the porch and notice it's dead quiet again. I asked her to come out to the porch with me, but she said she's tired and wants to call her boyfriend and go to bed. My wife gets up early and takes care of the kids. It's my job to handle night shift, so she's in bed at this point. I decided that I don't have the guts to do this alone, so I put on a movie and relax in my recliner. I end up falling asleep, then wake up at 3 o'clock a.m. to a noise coming from my niece's room. It sounds like a deep voice, and I knock on the door. I call out several times but get no response. I figure it must be a video, and decide to let it be. I head to bed. And just as I start to pass out, another loud bang happens. I wake up and hear what sounds like something skittering on wall outside my bedroom. Understand that this is way up in the air and physically impossible. I look out the window but don't see anything. After going out and checking on this bang multiple times over the last year and seeing nothing, I decided to forget it and go back to sleep. The next day my niece comes out and tells me that she had the shadow thing happen again, except this time she left her light on. She said she woke up getting that feeling again. She said that when she opened her eyes, she could see an extremely tall, shadowy figure standing over the top of her. He said it was moving closer to her. And just as it started to get details of its face, she turned around in a panic, but nothing was there. She said the eyes haunted her but didn't want to elaborate any further. The next morning, for the first time ever, my niece is up bright, and early I noticed she looked anxious as she told me that she's headed home for the 4th of July weekend and will be back on Tuesday. I ask her if she's okay. She says yes and quickly walks out the door. Later that day, I get a call from my sister telling me that she won't be coming back. I ask her if everything is all right, and she says yes, that she just wants to enjoy the rest of her summer a little. While later I get a call from my niece telling me she doesn't want to work here anymore as she can't handle the anxiety from whatever is out there. She doesn't elaborate more than that. Whatever has been going on in her room has her petrified. I checked on her room and noticed that she has been sleeping with one of the windows wide open. This window is perfectly accessible from the outside. I don't know what's been going on to her. Whatever it is looks like it could have been coming in the room. Fast forward to the 4th of July. I do fireworks out front of our property, by the road facing the woods. Due to what's been happening at night, I decided to do them prior to it getting dark outside. We do our fireworks, and just as it starts getting dark, I get everyone inside. After a couple of hours, I remember that my hose is still on the ground, and laying out in the road, I head out to clean everything up and put the hose away. While I'm doing this, I notice it's dead silent again, minus the distant sound of fireworks in the distance. The hairs on the back of my neck go up, and I get the feeling that I'm being watched again. I hurry and coil the hose and run back into the house. I swear I'm starting to wonder if it's just my mind playing tricks on me at this point. The one day I woke up late may have saved my life. I've told this story in other places on other accounts before, but it bears repeating. One day when I was an elementary schooler, I think probably 3rd or 4th grade, I was awoken by my mom in a rush. She had overslept. And since she always woke me up in the morning, this meant too that I overslept, and now there was just no way I was going to be ready for school early enough to get on the school bus. My school bus started at 8 o'clock a.m., and my bus pickup time was 7 o'clock a.m., and it was already like 6:40 or something. I was still in my pajamas and hadn't even eaten breakfast yet, so Mom decided that today we would just tell the bus driver to go on ahead, and she would take me to school, which would give me plenty of time to get ready. So I'm sitting there at the dining table eating breakfast still in my pajamas, and it's now about 6:50. We hear the bus pull up about 10 minutes earlier than usual. My mom peeks her head out the door into the foggy morning and waves the bus on. She closes the door and comes back inside, but the bus doesn't pull away. There's a knock at the door. My mom opens it to find a man in a bus driver uniform. He explained that he's a substitute driver because the regular driver called in sick. He says he knows he's a few minutes early, but since he wanted to get an early start on the route since he didn't know it well. Mom explains to him that she's going to take me to school since we woke up late. He gets visibly upset and says that he can wait a few minutes since he's already running ahead of schedule. My mom insists that no, I won't be ready to go in a few minutes, and tells him to go on ahead. He seemed angry about this, but turned around and got back in the bus and left. I returned to eating my breakfast and still don't have my school clothes on at this point. But 7 o'clock a.m. sharp, another bus pulls up to my house. Mom thinks this is weird and goes outside to talk to them. She comes back inside looking terrified, but doesn't really say anything about it, and tells me to finish getting ready for school. At the time, I didn't know what happened, but my mom would end up telling me years later when she went to the second bus. She found that it was being driven by my regular bus driver, was full of all the other kids that are usually on the route. The other bus was empty, by the way. Mom asked the driver about the substitute driver and about him calling in sick. He says, "I never called in sick. There is no substitute driver on my route." He says the driver immediately called dispatch and panicked and told my mom to go inside and call the police, which she did without me knowing, and report this incident. There was absolutely no one doing my driver's route that day. Whoever this was most likely a kidnapper who had targeted me. I never heard anything about it again, not even if someone else had ended up being picked up by this mysterious fake bus driver. But chances are, had I gotten on that bus, I would have never made it back to school or back home. And if Mom hadn't overslept on that specific day, I would have been on that bus. Church in the Woods. I posted this on r/backwoodscreepy a while back, but on this throwaway account my wife suggested this sub might find it interesting as well. Here it goes. I grew up in Ohio in the 70s, and me and my childhood friend Joe were outside all the time we could manage it. Joe lived on a farm that bordered a pretty big forest, and my parents would drop me off in the mornings, and we'd stay in the woods all weekend. We'd only come out for school. We loved pretending we were frontiersmen. We'd build shelters, traps, practice making fire with bow drills, the whole 9 yards. When we got to be in high school, we got this notion to pull a Stand By Me. This was based on the movie of the same name that had just come out. The idea was that we would walk the railroad tracks out in the country. But instead of looking for a dead body, we'd find cool bridges to fish from and camp a little ways off the tracks. Of course, we knew this was dangerous, and we'd likely be trespassing, but we were kids. We had a lot of fun. We did find beautiful rivers. We discovered bridges no one went to. We fished. We hid from trains at night. We camped just near the tracks and made small hidden fires. Nothing bad ever happened. It was idyllic. In fact, it was so fun we did it multiple times and never had a problem. After high school, me and Joe went our own ways. We both left home, but always stayed in touch and would always try to coordinate visits so we'd see each other occasionally. Well, one summer in the mid-90s, it worked out that we were both in town for about a week. We do stuff with family in the day, and at night, we'd either catch drinks at a bar or sit outside Joe's house around a fire and talk about the old days. One night, me and Joe got to talking about our Stand By Me trips. Well, nostalgia and beer are hell of a mix. Soon, we decided to take a day walk the rails camp one night and walk home. The day came. We started out early in the morning. We had my wife drop us off in our old spots where we used to start right outside our hometown. She thought this was absolutely crazy and made sure to mention it when she pulled away. Joe suggested that instead of walking the usual route, we take the opposite direction just to be adventurous. We knew the land well. We had a map, so I gave a what the hell and off we went. The day went fine. It was fun and a little sad, but in a good way. We found a bridge and sat on the edge, smoked a joint, and moved on. We had no fishing gear, but we brought some canned food and other stuff. Before night settled in, we picked a spot to camp. It was a thick forested area, trees on either side of the train track, so you felt like you were in a tunnel. We had brought small hammocks to sleep on, but before we set them up, we decided to do a little scouting of the perimeter. Now this is what we used to do in the good old days too. We'd walk the area around a little bit to make sure some dude's house wasn't just over a hill. We were actually camping in their yard. We walked maybe 100 or so feet into the woods and up a small incline. We figured if we didn't see anything from on top of this hill, we'd be fine. But when we got to the top, we saw an old building down at the bottom about 100 yards into the woods. It was barely visible. We pondered over what to do. We both assumed it was like a sugar shack or something, because there didn't appear to be a clear road into it from where we were. There didn't look to be anyone in it either. All was quiet, no movement could be seen, no lights. We decided to walk a little closer to just make sure. We came down the hill very slowly, and as we neared the building, we saw it wasn't a sugar shack at all. It was an old church. It looked like it had been abandoned for years. It was a squat, sagging building, whose wooden planks were almost black from years of moss and rot. A cross still stood on top of the place, also weathered black. None of the windows had glass, and there were no doors, just open doorways. We got close enough to see inside. There are rows of pews and a built-up section in front for a preacher to stand. We didn't go all the way, and we didn't want to beyond all that. There was no sign of anyone else, no footprints, no paths, no roads. It was an abandoned church. We left immediately and went back up the hill to our spot. We had picked to camp. Having a hill between us and the church made us feel better. We were still a little uneasy. We chalked it up to a natural creepiness. Seeing a church in the middle of the woods would be on any listed. Besides, at this point it was dusk, and we decided to rig up our hammocks and go to sleep and move on at the early morning. Night set in, and as we lay in our hammocks and shot the shit, we began to hear something in the direction of the church. Our conversation about it went a little like this: do you hear that? What the fuck is that? Sounds like people singing. And it did sound like singing. We both slid right out of our hammocks and hunkered down, straining to hear more. We listened for a minute or two, and the singing continued. It wasn't getting louder. Finally, we decided to creep back up on the hill to see if we could spy where the sound was coming from. We could still move very quietly in the woods. From the old days, it was second nature to us. The moon was barely out, but it provided enough light so you wouldn't walk right into a tree. But it was near pitch black. We didn't use flashlights as we crept slowly up the hill, and we didn't talk. When we got to the top, we saw light in the distance. It was coming from the church, and the singing was coming from inside. Joe and I put our heads close together and had a hushed conversation that boiled down to, can you believe this shit? The light looked like candle light from the way it flickered, and though we tried, we couldn't make out what was being sung. It sounded like church music, but in another language. We sat and watched for a while, trying to see who was in there, but we only saw occasional shadows. We had no intention of getting closer either. We had about a football field length between us, and we aimed to keep it that way. The singing continued for a bit, then it stopped. After that, a booming male voice began to chant. I was already freaked out, but this voice thoroughly scared the shit out of me. It sounded like some Old Testament preacher you see in the movies. But again, it was like he was speaking in a different language because we couldn't understand a single word. Eventually, it got to where the single male voice would say something, and then a bunch of voices would answer in song. This lasted for a while, and then they all broke into this long, sustained wail that just kept getting louder. It got so loud and so disturbing that I covered my ears. Then it stopped. At this point, I was just getting ready to say, let's get the fuck out of here, when Joe put a hand on my shoulder and hissed, they're coming out. We are far enough away where we couldn't make them out really well, but what we could see was a line of figures walk out the open doorway, all holding hands in single file. We could see some of them had flashlights. They began to sing again, and the light from the flashlights began to move towards us in the hill. We booked it back down to the campsite, grabbed our shit, and ran to the tracks. Once there, we ran down the tracks in the direction we had come from. After a few minutes, we stopped and looked back. We saw lights coming down from the hill. They're moving erratically, like whoever was holding them was shaking them. We continued to run in spurts and walk as fast as we could. We eventually stopped seeing lights and came to a road by our map. We knew a small town was about 15 minutes down it. We walked there, got to a 24-hour gas station, and called my wife to come get us. My wife and other friends all just thought it was just kids messing around, but I heard these voices, and they sure as hell didn't sound like kids to me. Not sure who those people were, but it was definitely the creepiest thing that happened to me out in those woods. Missed being killed by a serial killer. Back in about 2000 or 2001, I was driving by myself from visiting my mom in Colorado back to Arizona. I was in a station wagon and had a desk my mom had given me that was my grandfather's. I've always been scared of driving at night, that there was just someone in my backseat that is going to get me. This might be because of too many scary movies, or because my mom's paranoia rubbed off on me. She would get mad at me for sleeping at rest stops or gas stations and tell me someone was going to kidnap and kill me, but I just didn't want to be bothered with the hassle and expense of a motel. Most of the time I digress. So I'm driving an empty stretch of highway late at night with no other cars around. This red truck comes up behind me, flashing his lights and honking his horn at me. I was thinking to myself that there was something wrong with my car. Maybe there was something wrong with the desk in the hatchback, because why else would he be so insistent on me pulling over? So I pull over. I was in my mid-20s and still a bit naive, and get out of my car. As I am getting out of my car, he's directly behind me and still flashing his lights and honking his horn. I got out to the middle of the car. I planned on going to the back to see what could have been wrong with my car, when it hit me. Why is he still honking at me when I'm out of my car? That's odd. Then he gets out of his truck. That's when I knew something just wasn't right. I jumped back in my car and sped off. The next exit was 45 miles away or so away. He followed me the entire time. I take the first exit and go to the crowded grocery store with a laundromat next to it. There was an ambulance parked at the laundromat with its lights flashing, and I was next to it. I figured if there was an ambulance, then eventually a police officer should come. The man stayed in his truck in the grocery store parking lot watching me the entire time. I was terrified. I did not want to get out of my car and felt like an idiot if I would have had to tell someone what happened. I waited about an hour and he finally left. After he left, I waited a little longer before continuing my drive back to Arizona. I was paranoid and watching for any red trucks the entire time. Fast forward about 5 to 6 years, I'm watching Unsolved Mysteries or some similar type crime show with my hubby. At the time, he knew what happened as we were dating when it happened. And what story pops up? One about a man on the same exact stretch of highway with a red truck that used those exact tactics to get a few women to pull over and murdered them. I really am glad my gut told me something was wrong and get back in my car and drive. Thought my boyfriend got home from work. It wasn't my boyfriend. My boyfriend, who I live with, works as a teacher in a town about 15 minutes away by train. He gets home more or less at the same time every day, give or take an hour or so. I, on the other hand, work from home. In late January of this year, we had gotten a pretty big fight about something stupid. I can't even remember what it was about now, but it was one of those fights where we didn't speak to each other, text, call, or anything the whole next day. So this afternoon I was laying in bed getting work done. It was a Tuesday, and I was pretty sure his last class finished at 1:00 p.m. on Tuesdays, meaning he'd surely be home at 2:30, but around 1:00 p.m. I heard the front door open and shut. I thought, I guess he's home an hour early today. It was normal for him to skip his last class every once in a while, so I didn't really think anything of it. In fact, I was almost mentally preparing for the awkward post-fight, "Hey, how's it going?" conversation. So I continued to lie in bed and do my work and wait for him to come in and change his clothes. The bedroom door was closed, and I had earplugs sort of half in, as I usually do when I'm working. But I could hear the heavy footsteps of him walking around the apartment, as he always does if we hadn't been in a mid-fight, and wasn't so preoccupied with the awkwardness of it. All I might have noticed, it was strange how slow the footsteps were, or how long he spent walking around the living room. But I was caught up in the dramatics of the fight, and didn't think about it. I was just lying there waiting for him to finally come in. Finally, the bedroom door slowly opened in just a few inches. I turned my head towards the door and prepared to give him a sort of awkward "we've been fighting for 24 hours, smile. But the door didn't open more than a few inches. I looked and saw that it was a woman's hand with red nail polish on the doorknob. Whoever was there slowly closed the door just as they had opened it without entering the room. I jumped out of bed, ripped out my earplugs, and sort of froze there for a few seconds while thinking rapidly. My first thought, that was not my boyfriend. Then I thought, could that have been his mom, his sister, the landlady? For some reason, I conclude that surely it was his mom or sister. So I opened the bedroom door and walked into the living room. There wasn't anyone there, but the room smelled heavily of woman's perfume. Then I came to my senses and realized his mom and sister don't have keys, and I've never come over here before. The landlady has never entered without permission. This was a stranger. I ran back into the bedroom and shut the door, now shaking heavily. There was a balcony connected to the bedroom, so despite the cold January rain, I stood on the balcony and called my boyfriend. He picked up, and I asked him if his mom or sister might have come over unannounced. He told me, "No, don't move, I'm calling the police." The police were there in a few minutes and searched the whole apartment. Of course, nobody was there. By this point, it was weird, though nothing was missing from the apartment despite us keeping a jar full of money right in the entrance. Nothing was even touched. In fact, it seemed like the intruder came straight to the bedroom, saw my legs on the bed, panicked, and left. Plus, you can't open that big wooden front door without a key. For a few days, my boyfriend and I were convinced it was just the landlady being nosy. I began to feel better. Nevertheless, we demanded that the landlady change her locks. When she came to change them with her husband, she made a discovery. There was a square area by the keyhole that had been scratched away with something. The lady said surely someone used tools to break into the apartment. Then a day or two later, my boyfriend told me, "I have to tell you something, but don't freak out." He told me that the orange kitchen scissors were missing. I obviously freaked out. I tore the apartment apart looking for those scissors. It's been 6 months, and those scissors are gone. So the whole thing is just creepy and weird. A stranger breaks into a nice apartment, but doesn't touch or take anything valuable, not even the money jar sitting right in the entrance. Takes scissors from the kitchen, goes straight to the bedroom, sees someone in the bed, and immediately leaves. I never got to meet the person who opened that door that day, and I hope I never do. Almost kidnapped in Miami because of Instagram. My best friend is an influencer, not big time, but with a big enough following to get free shit, and has gotten 2 sponsored trips. She still works a full-time job, but does the IG thing on the side, mostly because of the perks. She's not big enough to live off this. Yet anyway, this was her first trip. A little boutique hotel from Miami contacted her via IG and DMs and offered her an all-expenses-paid trip to Miami for Memorial Weekend in 2018 in exchange for her to be in the hotel and take pics and do a couple of stories. She was told she could bring a female friend with her if she wanted to, and everything would be covered for her. This was her first time doing this, so at the time, she wasn't really sure how it worked. They sent her a bogus contract for her to sign, and it said she's responsible for paying for her plane ticket to Miami and that she'd be reimbursed for it later. This was to prevent a no-show, meaning the influencer gets the ticket purchased by the hotel and the influencer never shows up. It seemed reasonable. She invited me, a gay dude, instead of a female friend because she was nervous about the whole thing. We figured it wouldn't be a big deal in worst-case scenario. They don't want to pay for my plane ticket. She just cover it for me and that's it. We were supposed to be picked up by the hotel at the airport. So the day comes, and we arrive to Miami. There's a guy holding a sign with her last name in paper and has the hotel logo. We are greeted, and we are escorted to a black SUV. Here is where things get weird. As soon as we were going to get in the car, the driver is visibly upset. We thought he was talking to my guy who walked us over, but he was also talking to my friend. He had a very thick accent, was dark, wearing dark shades. He was telling me my friend was not allowed to bring her boyfriend me, and that they said 2 girls. 2 girls. Hotel told me 2 girls. No, 1 girl, 1 guy, 2 girls. He was demanding to see where the other girl was. We were speechless and confused. The guy who talked us to the car looked annoyed, got in the passenger seat, and started to fight with the driver in Portuguese. It wasn't Spanish. Then he turns to us and asks where the other girl is. My friend tells them they're very upset now, that there is no other girl, that she is at insert username, and that I'm just a friend coming with her on the trip. The big guy in the passenger seat gets out, tosses our luggage out of the car, and says something like, "This is some bullshit," gets in the car, and then takes off. That was it. We in shock, utter complete shock. My friend immediately emails, quote, Melissa, the PR person we had been in contact through email with, to tell what happened. No response. We decided to take a cab and show up to the hotel. When we show up is when everything made sense. The hotel had been rebranded and had a completely different name, owner, and staff. We showed them the IG, and is indeed the IG of the hotel it used to be, but not the new one. They never contacted us. They never did anything. Whoever was in charge of the old IG account for the old hotel did, or whoever got a hold of it did. Mind you, this was a somewhat big hotel account for 10,000 followers. It was real, but upon further inspection, We realized the pics were really old, and so were the posts. My friend felt like an idiot and would not stop crying. We called the police, met up with a detective. Nothing ever came out of it. They investigated who was running the account before, or who had access to it. None of the people who used to run the account had anything to do with it. Nothing ever came out of this. It's upsetting and scary to know that whoever wanted to abduct my friend, or any other girls by using this old hotel Instagram, knows who my friend is. That IG has since been deleted, and we never heard anything from anyone ever again. But to think my friend would have been kidnapped had she gone with another girl instead of me sends chills down my spine. I wish it was my drunk roommates eating my food. This is my brother's girlfriend's story. She doesn't have a Reddit, but I told her about the subreddit, and she wanted to share her story because it's creepy, but also to learn from. I go to school in a big city that is one of the least safe cities in the US. I chose this school for nursing, and definitely not for the location. I live in a row house. That's what we call it, off campus, with 4 other girls, cheaper and nicer than dorms. Or so. We thought. I guess you get what you pay for. We're all girls and sophomores in college. As you would guess, we go out and drink, come back and do things we don't remember. We had just started a rent in August, 3 floors plus a basement, which was padlocked by the owners. Understandable. We would definitely have parties down there to avoid immediate cleanup. The house was great, amazing location to the school and work. I'm a CNA who works odd hours, important for later. It was not expensive, in good condition. I'd never lived with that many people before, just one roommate. So before we definitely knew it, one of us had misplaced or changed something. I started to notice my snacks were either half gone or completely gone. I was getting annoyed. But a house of many people, it's too much work to go figure out who ate it, so I ignored it slowly, as girls do. We started making comments about someone eating our food, but passive-aggressively, college girls. We all just let it go, cuz who wants a whole house fight? I work until about 11 o'clock in the NICU, get home at around 11:30, mostly on weeknight nights. I started to notice hands left out or snack wrappers around. I thought it was odd, cuz none of my roommates had done that before, but just thought, oh, they probably drank a bottle of wine, then went to bed and forgot all about this again. My roommates started making comments. This time we started to ask, because it was getting annoying, all our food being gone and things being left. I know it was one of them, but who wants to admit they ate someone else's snacks? In college, snacks are a high commodity. We chalked it up to the girl who always smokes and eats her weight in food. She swore it wasn't her. This went on for about 2 months. It got more obvious. Someone was clearly taking everyone's food. Definitely the girl that always smokes. I see her eat her whole snack pantry in a night. I wish it was her. One night at work, I was about to get off, but a situation happened, and I didn't end up leaving till 12:30. I took the bus home. I carried pepper spray, taser, and pocket knife. Don't worry, I got home and was about to collapse. I wanted to go to bed ASAP. I walked to the front door, and the stairs are directly in front of you. You can also see down the side of the kitchen. I walked in and saw someone in the kitchen. I was too tired to say hi, thinking it could end up in like a 30-minute conversation about nothing, so I went straight upstairs. When I got to the 2nd floor, I noticed all my roommates' doors were closed, which always means they are either in the room for the night or asleep. I got a weird feeling, just something that made it click. They're all asleep, right? I texted our house group chat asking if anyone was in the kitchen. I felt stupid for even asking. 2 responded no, and they said the other 2 had been asleep. I know it wasn't any of my roommates down there at the moment. I dialed 911, but didn't press call. I crept into my roommate's room across the hall. Thankfully, or maybe not thankfully, she didn't have her door locked. I whispered, telling her I think someone is in the house. She gave me the wildest eyes ever and almost looked like she was about to cry. She didn't suspect anything like I had, but for a reference, a very bad area, as in there was a shooting in the house 2 doors down only weeks earlier by an intruder. She mouthed to make the call. The whole time we were dead silent. We didn't hear really anything at all. I was starting to think I was seeing things after such a long day at work, and was regretting that I dialed, thinking I'm going to look like an idiot when they show up, and I was just overtired and dreaming. We explained what's going on, and they said they will send someone ASAP, and that actually does mean right away, since it is a big and dangerous city. The police showed up, I didn't even want to go downstairs, but the operator confirmed it was them, so I did. But the whole time I could swear the operator could hear my heart beating. The police came in and looked around. I'm thinking, oh God, I look so dumb. They asked if there are any other floors. We tell them technically the basement, but it's padlocked, so really no. They checked the basement just in case, and well, yeah, they were right. A man had been living in the quote padlocked basement. The lock was pulled off the hinges and just kind of propped up against the wall. We never looked at that though. We rarely went out back. The guy had taken a comforter of one of my roommates out of the hall closet, had a mattress from God knows where, and his clothes, well, he was the one moving and eating all of our stuff. He would come out in the middle of the night and do it. He started getting more comfortable. I don't know if he was drugged out and forgot to clean his tracks, or if he really didn't care. Me and my roommates had been pretty consistent schedules during the week, probably letting him think that any time after 12 was good to come out. We never slept with our individual doors locked, and that's what freaks me out the most. He had access to any one of us at any moment, and we had no idea. When he was getting arrested, I was the only one to go down and look. I don't know why I did. I wish I didn't. I took a picture of the process of him being arrested to show my roommates, who were too afraid to go down. This is him. So yeah, let's never actually meet dude. Edit some questions about all the stuff he had down there. The clothes were some unexplainable, and the nice button-down shirts you see are from shirts from two of our roommates' boyfriends. They complain about losing. The basement was also used as extra storage for the owners long ago, so that's why there's a pull-up bar and random bigger things. Not everyone has to believe it, but I do. It happened to me, and it was very scary. Edit for clarification on the pronoun changing from me to her. It's because I was with my brother's girlfriend when posting this, and a little bit after. But when she left, I started answering for her, asking her for the answers. I just didn't want to pretend to be her in the comments. I was saying what she told me when I asked. Sorry. I should have made that clear, cause now people think it's fake. It happened. There's a picture there. I thought there'd be enough to show it's true. I work at a gas station. It's 3:00 a.m. and this guy keeps insisting that I come outside to help him with the gas pump. I'm on mobile, so forgive me. Quick backstory. I work at a gas station on a main route. We see a lot of travelers passing through. Only one person works each shift, and it's a 24-hour store. We are short-staffed, so I agreed to an overnight. I'm female. I work in a state that's always had self-serve gas stations. So this guy comes in. I asked him if he needed any help. He says no, he's getting gas at the pump, but needs to use the bathroom. I go back to work on whatever invoices we got. Yesterday, the guy uses the bathroom and then comes back outside. About 5 to 7 minutes later, he comes back inside and tells me that he's confused about the pump. He directly says, you might have to come outside to help me. Customers don't often say this. They usually just complain that it's not working, so I'm already feeling weird about this guy. I shake it off cause he looks like a real nerd, and I don't feel afraid of him really. I look at the register to see what error it came up with for his pump, and there's no errors. The register doesn't even say it was in use. Even if someone tries to pay, nothing's wrong with their payment. It will at least say payment/loyalty timed out. But literally, he had no sign of him trying to use it. Before asking me to help, I asked him if he wants to just pay inside. He agrees to it, gets his wallet out of his car, and then pays $10. I give him his receipt, and he says, can you help me? I don't understand the machine, and I say, we aren't really allowed to leave the store during overnight shifts, as it's just me here, and it's not safe to go outside. I don't know why I told him I was alone, but he wasn't seeming threatening. He proceeds to say, I don't understand what it's asking me. I need help. I'm not scary. I tell him again that I can't go outside because it's store policy for the overnight shift, and say it's not that you're scary, I just can't go outside. I would have to tell a little old lady asking for help at this hour the same thing, which is true. We can't even take out the trash during overnights. He starts to walk away from the register counter now, but then again stops at the door and asks me one last time to come outside and help him. I'm pretty annoyed at this point. I've said no twice now. I'm not going, so stop asking. I finally say in a super annoyed tone, okay, all you need to do is 1, pick up the nozzle, 2, select fuel grade button, and 3, put in your tank and squeeze the handle. I'm not going outside then. He finally goes back to his car And the register tells me he had no trouble pumping gas. Also, his plates seem like they're from the state I work in. This kind of thing wouldn't make me suspicious usually. But the fact that he originally opted for me to go outside instead of bringing money inside at 3 a.m. is weird, along with how he didn't bother to use the pump before he came inside to ask for help, claiming it wasn't working, and him not taking my first no for an answer no means no, so potential gas station abductor, let's not meet again. Stalked in the woods. I posted this in Missing 411, and in my planning of my upcoming camping trips, felt the urge to post it here, mostly a copy and paste with an update on one of the family members. This may be a ramble of thoughts, but after recently stumbling on the sub, I finally felt a place I could offer, something that my family and I experienced a few years ago that to the day gives me a shiver. I have been camping, solo backpacking, and hunting my whole life in Oregon and felt comfortable in the woods, and I've a deep respect for nature. A few years ago, my wife, daughter, and 2 German shepherds went camping north of Mount Jefferson, Oregon. I have included the coordinates of our campsite, which we found to be the perfect setup for us and our 2 dogs, who need the privacy since they are intimidating to other dog owners and can be loud. When spooked, it was not an established campsite, just a nice horseshoe off of USFS Road that had flat ground, full trees, and a fire pit. The first night, my daughter wanted to sleep by herself in a 2-man tent RX. It was maybe 2 ft away from me and my wife's tent. We made the male German shepherd sleep. Guts is his name, with her in the tent that whole first night. Neither my wife and I could sleep. We both heard footsteps, and they were heavy, not like typical forest critters scrambling around the night. I was well armed because I was paranoid from recently reading before departing about a family in California who was shot and killed in a tent next to his 2 infant daughters. Needless to say, both my wife and I had 2 pistols and my rifle with me. The dogs are great at detection, and that is why I felt my daughter could sleep alone, because Guts is completely fearless and nothing would lay a hand on her without a battle to the death. All in all, nothing but bad vibes and loud footsteps occurred that night, which I ultimately decided was deer or maybe some elk. Day 2 morning, we go for a walk down the road, and maybe 300 ft away, see the circle area in the photo. I seen an abandoned road where a rusted post gate was missing, was covered in vegetation. Something of blue color caught my eye, and Guts immediately takes off running down this abandoned road. My heart begins to race because I think it's another family camping like us, and he's going to get himself shot or scare some innocent people to death, so I chase after him as fast as I can, and the rest follow. He stops after 20 ft into the road and me yelling his name, but I've covered just enough distance to see that there's nobody there. And something's off about the sight. I yell, "Hello, is anyone there? Sorry about my dog." I got no response. My curiosity gets the best of me, and I have to see what the site conditions were. As I got closer, I know something is wrong. It had all the necessities for a campsite, including a cooler, propane burner, tent, blankets, folding table, but every single item had been completely destroyed, smashed, and torn from what appears to be claw marks. We all walked around in circles, puzzled why anyone would leave all their camping gear behind, including an expensive REI-10. I figured, well, someone left in a hurry, and animals got to the rest as the only logical explanation. Still, a propane tank and cooler were flattened by something, and it certainly wasn't snow-packed with tree coverage in that spot. As the afternoon rolls in, me and my daughter are playing bocce ball at the campsite, and my wife goes walking maybe 70 ft north to do her business. I do not have the direct line of sight on her, but all of a sudden I see Guts make a mad dash straight towards her. Normally, he would always be with me unless he's called over, and she didn't call for him. His speed and focus caught my attention, and I knew something weird was happening, so I ran over there, and my wife starts jogging at me, and I immediately dropped my pistol. Guts has completely continued running into the forest another 100 feet before I call him, and he stopped. My other dog, Lee, who never misses the opportunity to be the pack leader, is not taking point. I've had her for about 7 years now. This was the first time in her life she refused to leave my daughter's side. She was full hair raised and attached to us to the hip again. Anytime we hike or play, Lee is up front bossing everything in her path, and pauses to look to see where we are and continues. I asked my wife what happened, and she said I was trying to pee, and all of a sudden, I felt all my hair rise up. I know someone was watching me. And then I saw guts running towards me. I just got to move towards you. We spent 10 minutes looking for any signs of anything, and saw no trails, broken branches, nothing to point to what. And where something went, we decided we were spending one more night since it's too late to pack up and drive. But we will all be in the big tent together. Before we go to bed, I put a rope with the makeshift coin alarm around the perimeter of the campsite. I used a mint can and some coins and keys from our truck and zip tie. It's so anything hitting the rope gave a little jingle, very unsophisticated. But it put my wife at ease as I go to tie my last corner off at a tree near our tent. Our third mystery item unveils itself. Looks like someone had done the same exact thing I've done with a rope that was so old and brown I didn't see it at first. It was broken, and only a few pieces remained, but sure enough it was tied at roughly the same height, 8 to 10 in off the ground, and even had a few rusted washers on it. I immediately felt someone had stayed here before and put the same makeshift warning system on the same tree. I am maybe 10-15 years ago. Based on the condition of the rope, perhaps my paranoia has now reached a new height. But I made sure that the girls felt safe, and at the time, the only thing I could think of was when the evening came around, I made them sit in the truck, and I fired a clip of my .45 into the dirt as a signal to whatever was out there that we are armed. I reassured the girls that anybody listening to that now knows we have 2 wolves and we are armed, and we are too risky of a target so we can sleep safely that night. We heard no footsteps and the dogs never perked up and barked. We left early the next morning. Fast forward to today, and I watched the Amazon Missing 411 Hunted documentary. I noticed a cluster smack dab close to where we camped that weekend, and a flood of dread rushes me as I think of that mysterious abandoned campsite with the ripped tent and smashed cooler and cooktop. We have been camping since, and I've enjoyed the beauty of the Northwest. But there was something there at that place that possibly took or harmed someone else less than 300 ft away from where we camped, and we all thank our lucky stars Guts was doing his thing so well that afternoon. And all right guys, I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you enjoyed today's video, please comment down below. Let me know your thoughts. What would you like to see in the future? What would you like to see improved on? And please subscribe to the channel. I'm sure you'll enjoy other videos on the channel, so check some other videos out. Thank you so much for sticking around. And this is Creepy McGee, and I'll see you next time. Bye.